If you want Colts talk all year long, you're in the right place.
Taylor hit, but he bounces into the end zone. Touchdown! I-N-D-Y!
How can we, like you mentioned, as pillars, as guys who are leaders on this team, how can we turn that around?
Play action. Now he's in trouble, and he's going to be brought down. A sack for the Colts. DeForest Buckner back to the 27-yard line.
Never quit. I never not fault. I never not compete. And I will always continue to be a great leader, a great competitor.
Now he checks it down left side, looking for the end zone for Alec Pierce, and he's got it. Touchdown, Alec Pierce.
This is the official Colts podcast, giving you an updated look at what's new with the Horseshoes. In the Indiana Union Construction Industry radio studio, let's get the podcast started.
What's up, everyone? It's another episode of the official Colts podcast here on the Colts Audio Network. We are brought to you by our friends at WynnBET. I'm JJ Stankovitz here with Casey Vallier and Bill Brooks. We got football things to talk about. Guys, you know what I love about that intro? You get Matt Taylor's highlight calls of a DeForest Buckner sack, Alec Pierce touchdown, and it's like, football's right around the corner. It doesn't feel like it right now. Players are out of the building. This is kind of the NFL mandated time off over the next couple of weeks. But what's today? 6/20 we're taping this. 2 months from today, the Colts will have hosted a preseason game against the Chicago Bears at Lucas Oil Stadium. Bill, you and I probably will have taped an instant reaction podcast the morning after.
Yes.
We're going to be in the middle of preseason. We're going to be talking Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew, and we're going to be almost at the start of the regular season. It's going to happen quick, is what I'm saying.
And you say that, you know, that it might not feel like the season's right around the corner, but I bet you for the players, they feel like it's right around the corner, knowing that when they come back, it's all starting again. It's going to start in the preseason. So right now they're thinking about, you know what, I have to stay in shape to make sure that when camp starts, I'm ready to go. So for them, it's here. It's here right now.
When you got in this stretch in your career, Bill, of like couple weeks before training camp, were you in like hurry up and relax mode? Like, I gotta relax. Like, get me to the beach. I gotta sit here and relax. Or were you like, I gotta, just keep my same routine, stay in shape? Like, how did you handle that?
I had to say that I want to do a few things to get done so I can relax. So I want to get those things out of the way so I could relax maybe the last week, the last 2 weeks right before training camp. But I also said I have to work out to stay in shape. I thought, if I missed a workout here or missed a workout there, I would feel bad. I feel guilty about missing that workout. I needed to make sure that I had got my workouts in, but get enough done so I can relax and be ready for training camp.
Casey, speaking of working out, you just said you put a swing set together and you're sore in places you didn't know you could be sore.
Yeah. That's not a good thing there, JJ. It's kind of a
look. I just played pickleball and I'm like, oh my god, I'm dying.
I mean, there's times I wake up and I'm like, man, my knee hurts, my back hurts, and I didn't do anything. But no, I'm glad you talked about that, Bill, because that's one of the things I asked some of these players, like, what are you doing in this time? And they're all like, I mean, I've got a little vacation. Maybe I'm gone for 5 days, but then it's training. And that's where it's like there's a little bit of that misconception. Like, okay, the players are gone for 6 weeks. It's not like they completely put all of this out of their mind, because ultimately when those 6 weeks are up, you got to be ready to go, because training camp comes and you blink and all of a sudden you're suiting up for that week 1 game against Jacksonville. Like, it's going to be here, and that's how it's going to go.
It seems like the real break for players, the time for them to, get away, maybe, take your mind off football, it's right after the season.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Where you don't need your body to be in peak physical shape on March 13th, but July 13th, you got to be ready, because 2 weeks from then is going to be your first practice of training camp.
Oh, yeah, and you got to deal with knowing that you're going to be sore for the next few days after practice, so you want to make sure that you're not that sore, so that's why you have to work out now to make sure that you're ready for training camp and to be ready to go through the physical rigors of training camp.
And JJ, that's what I'm hoping to be. I'm hoping to be out of my soreness from building a swing set by the time the players are reporting to camp. That's what I'm hoping. So I got about 6 weeks to really heal up.
There you go. Well, we got about 6 weeks for us here in the Colts content department. This is usually about the time of the year where we go on vacations. We kind of take a little time off. I was off last week. We took the family over to the beach at Myrtle Beach. Lara and Matt obviously off this week. I'll be taking some more time off in a couple of weeks. I'm sure we'll all just be kind of in and out here on the official Colts podcast over the next couple of weeks. But then training camp starts. We are right back into it. But we got some things to talk about. We got to wrap up minicamp. We didn't get to that Last week when we taped on Tuesday, we had a couple of days, only one more day of practice. The Colts cut minicamp short, gave players an extra day. Shane Steichen decided to do that. We're also going to talk about some positions on the team that are in question and discuss some uncertainties surrounding the Colts on a segment Matt Taylor called Wet Cement in the rundown he wrote. I love this. I love it. Mate's segment names are some of my favorite parts. I get the rundown, and it brings joy to me to see what he comes up with.
Very
it's great.
Creative.
Well, it's one of those things. So I write a lot of the pregame shows when the season rolls around, and there's a lot of times I'm like working with an idea, and I'll literally just go, Matt, here's the concept I have, and he'll give me 15 topics. He'd be like, oh, this is what your segment's title is, and it's like a rundown of 15. I'm like, well, I like all of them. I don't know how to narrow it down. So you're spot on with that. His segment titles, he's got a little bit of a knack for that, that's for sure.
All right, well, let's get into it. Let's talk about minicamp. The Colts held their mandatory minicamp last week, which signaled the end to the offseason program. Let's start with Anthony Richardson. So from rookie minicamp through the end of veteran minicamp last week, Bill, what were your impressions of Anthony? Where did you see him improve over the course of the spring? And I know it's kind of hard to tell sometimes when, especially during OTAs, you're working on a lot of basic stuff. We don't have the call sheets that they're giving. We don't have the practice plan. But just from your eye test, Bill, what did you see in Richardson over, maybe 6 or 7 weeks?
I think when you look at Anthony Richardson and when you first saw him out there, of course, we all saw the specimen that he was as far as a young man that is put together very well, very tall, very big. And you also saw his arm. You saw how the ball just flicked out of his hand. I mean, it's unbelievable when he threw the ball just kind of had some velocity, had some oomph behind it. And it got to the receiver pretty quick.
With ease.
Yes, with ease, yes. And his arm motion was so smooth. And that's one thing that stood out to me watching him play. So I think he's a young man that over time you saw some things where you saw him thinking just a little bit a couple of times. And then some other times you saw him just react. So I think over time you will see him improve on that by just reacting to plays, reacting to the defense, reacting to the coverage and things of that nature. So I like what I saw in him in regards to how he progressed that way. So it's going to take him time. He's a rookie. He's just got into the league. It's going to take him some time to adjust, but I think he's on the right track.
Okay, so you've listened to all the press conferences, all the media availabilities. You've talked to players and coaches over the last couple of weeks. What have you heard about Anthony Richardson that's kind of stood out to you?
Ultimately, that's been the biggest thing for me. Like, you can see what he's done on the field, but it's such a small sample size, and ultimately you got to remember he's only been an NFL quarterback for such a short amount of time, so there are going to be the ups and downs. I think the biggest thing is how he's kind of taking everything in stride. You hear from all the players. It was funny, Michael Pittman Jr., before everybody broke, he was talking about how he's struggling to get words in with him because he's always dialed in. Like, he's trying to tell him, hey, man, I just want to talk to you real quick. He's like, hold on, I'm looking at this design. I'm looking at this. He is doing everything that he is supposed to do, and you hear him talk, and you just truly believe it. I said it last week. It's hard to put words to it, but everything that he says, I believe him. I believe he's going through the process the right way. And ultimately, when he said, when you think about Anthony Richardson, you can look at the physical specimen, you can be speed, you can do all this. He goes, I want to be remembered as a great quarterback. And that doesn't mean I want to be remembered as a guy who was a dual threat quarterback who was really talented. He wants to be great. And I think he's got the mentality. He's got just that right now at this point, he's very early in this, so everything is positive. And he's had a little bit of ups and downs, but everything right now, I mean, you're being told you're the greatest thing ever right now. So you take it in, and that smile, that infectious smile and energy that you see. I mean, he's out there dancing, he's having a good time, and I feel like that just it spreads through the entire team. So all of that, he has truly taken on that. I was taken 4th overall, but I've got a lot of work to do. I got to come in. I got to be the first one in, last one out. I think he's kind of embraced all of that to this point.
Yeah, he's been as advertised when it comes to just his personality. I think the best way I can describe him is that he's loose, but he's very serious. And I think that's a really good combination. Like you said, Casey, you look at him out there on the practice field, and he's got this like ebullient energy to him where he's just kind of bouncing around.
Right.
He's having fun, but you can tell that he takes it seriously. It's not like he's joking around and he's, messing around out there. Like, this means a lot to him. And this is who he was advertised as in the pre-draft process, was that this kid's he's gonna be a really hard worker. He's gonna have that infectious energy, and he's gonna be moldable. He's going to be coachable. He's not going to be difficult to coach. And I think the offseason program, for me, what he did out on the practice field, I don't care how many completions he had in an OTA practice that we watched. I don't care, if he threw an interception here or he, threw a great pass there. What I just wanted to see was how he interacted with his teammates, confirm the physical skills are like off the charts incredible. And that then when you talk to the people who are coaching him and playing with him, what do you hear? And what I've heard has been just very positive when it comes to Richardson, that he's a good kid. He's got the athletic tools. He's got the coachability. He's got the mindset that he needs to be successful in the NFL. I want to talk about the defense, too. This is something that's sort of like this low-key storyline that I'm really interested in following. But you're into year 2 of Gus Bradley as the defensive coordinator. And, the change from, Matt Eberflus here for 4 years, playing a different kind of scheme. There is some overlap between what Eberflus did, what Gus Bradley does, but when you drill down on it, the responsibilities, I'm sure some of the language is going to be different. Does the defense look like they're playing a little faster? When you just see them out there, it kind of looks like some of those guys are moving a little bit faster, especially on the back end. Julian Blackmon at safety, when he's kind of playing that strong safety role, I think that seems like a pretty good fit for him. Bill, what did you see just from some of those guys on defense just as they get into that second year in Bradley's scheme?
And I agree with you, JJ. It looks like they are playing faster, and especially the guys that have been in this system previously last year. It looks like they're playing faster. They feel more comfortable. They are reacting to things. And another thing I noticed, it seems like they're playing with a lot more energy.
Yeah.
I should say practicing with a lot more energy. And the guys seem like they actually are enjoying practice. When a defense makes a play, they break up a play or they make an interception, you see the whole sideline of the defense jumping up and down, running with the guys with the interception back to the end zone like they do in a football game. So they're doing that in practice. So it shows to me that they're excited about this. They're ready to go. They want to be a part of this defense, and they're looking forward to the season. It seems like they have a pep in their step that's a little different from last year. So that's what I see in the defense right now. It looks like they're really enjoying themselves, and they're moving. I mean, they're breaking on the ball right now. As I saw the last couple of practices, the defense is ahead of the offense. Mm-hmm. Offense was struggling a little bit, but the defense is doing a nice job, and it was so fun to see everyone in the defense having a good time, having that energy, and really supporting one another.
Well, I think part of it, too, we heard the last couple days from Shane Steichen that was a lot of unscripted stuff. And this defense, you put that together with a new offense, a lot of new pieces, and a defense that ultimately, I think the word you didn't say within everything you were talking about, Bill, is comfortable.
Yes.
You're comfortable within this defense, within this scheme. You know where you're supposed to be. You know the coaching staff. And a lot of this defense is all returning. I mean, there's a couple new pieces here and there, but for the most part, that nucleus, that core is still there. I think that's what you saw. You saw a defense who, in their minds, they may not, it's May, it's June, but they just knew we're a step ahead. Yes. And that is, it's very important when you head towards these types of months, because a lot of times, if you're confident, I feel like you play better. It's just,
definitely.
I'm a baseball guy, and if I felt confident, I felt like I hit better. I did all of that stuff. I think it's just part of being an athlete. If you go in confident, I think this defense right now is very confident with how well they know this scheme, how well they know the defense, and how comfortable they are within it. I would completely agree that they look faster. And it's one of those things, it's kind of twofold because the offense is where it was. But one of the things I came away last week saying is this defense looked pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. Give me a player who popped this spring. Who do you got, Bill?
Wow. Oh, a player who popped this spring. I like Kylen Granson.
Yeah.
I like Kylen Granson. I thought he had a good spring this year. Looked fast, looked good, looked comfortable out there, catching the ball well. So I'm going to say Kylan Granson, me personally.
Really good start for him because that is a competitive tight end room.
Yes.
And for him to stand out the way that he did. Look, I mean, pads aren't on. You still got to go through putting the pads on. But Kylan Granson in year 3, this is a good start for him. He's got to still, go out and earn it in training camp, but you are encouraged, and I think we're all encouraged.
Right.
What we saw with Kylan Granson. Casey, who do you got?
So I have kind of a mixture of two. I'm going to say Darrell Baker Jr. And Dallas Flowers. I think both of those guys showed you, not that they showed you a lot that you're like, oh, you can go ahead and pencil him in as a day one starter, but I think you saw a lot from both of those guys taking a lot of first-team reps at a cornerback position with a lot of youth. So there's going to be a lot handed to some guys who really have very little experience. I thought Dallas Flowers took that next step at that point to kind of be that guy on the other side of Kenny Moore in your base package. Mm-hmm. But I think Darrell Baker Jr., he's a guy who undrafted last year, spent a lot of time on the practice squad, was elevated for a couple games mainly on special teams, but he took some runs with the ones, and he looked like the moment wasn't too big for him. Now, like I said, it is May and June. It's very early on, but I felt like he had a very good spring for this defense.
I'll throw out Julian Blackmon and Kenny Moore II.
Okay.
I thought both those guys, when we were talking about the defense playing with a lot of energy, those are two guys who I think kind of brought it. I thought Kenny looked a lot more comfortable. He talked about feeling a lot more comfortable, and it showed on the practice field. That's encouraging. Obviously, Kenny was not happy with the season he had last year. And then Julian, moving into that strong safety role, that requires a lot of communication within this defense, and Julian is a very good communicator. And he's actually going to be the guest on the Person Behind the Pads podcast on Thursday. You get to kind of know him a little bit off the field, but I think that's a role that is suited well for him. And he also put on some weight. I know we talked about that on a recent podcast. One other guy I want to throw out. So I wasn't at veteran minicamp last week, but the week before that at OTAs, I was watching Adetomiwa Adebare a little bit. And that guy can play. He can move a little bit. Now, again, same caveat, especially with the lineman. You got to get the pads on.
Yes.
But some of the way that his athletic ability at that 3 technique spot. Northwestern had him playing defensive end, and he was good. He was athletic, but he wasn't putting up like incredible numbers. His production maybe wasn't there. He goes to the Senior Bowl. They move him to 3 tech in Mobile, and all of a sudden at defensive tackle, it's like, ooh, this guy can play a little bit.
He can move, but
he required some projection, so that's why he fell all the way to the 4th round.
Right.
Athletically, he's off the charts. I mean, his 40-yard dash was under 4.5. It's insane.
That scares me.
Well, yeah. Bill, I know we talked about it because he ran faster than you at the combine, and he's 285.
That scares me. Someone that big running that fast, and he's chasing me down from a defensive line position. That scares me.
But I think when we get the pads on, if he can continue kind of showing some of those things, look, he's not going to start, but if he can be a solid rotational piece with Taven Bryan, Taekwon Lewis can kick inside. You get those guys who can play that 3 tech role and take some of the load off of DeForest Buckner. That's only going to make Buck better. If his snap share
fresher,
he's going to be fresher. I mean, and DeForest Buckner is one of the toughest dudes in the league.
Yes,
and one of the most in shape dudes in the league.
Hold on, you talk about tough. He played the entire essentially the entire season with a brace on his elbow, telling us that he would have required Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's unbelievable to me.
And I mean, just the nicks and bruises that he played through that you don't know about. But you get him down. Instead of playing closer to 80% of the snaps, maybe if he's closer to 70%, those could be really effective and like all-pro level snaps from DeForest Buckner. I'm encouraged by that. I'm interested to see how he kind of progresses. All right, so now that we are done with the offseason program and we're starting to think about training camp, give me a non-quarterback competition training camp storyline that you are now interested in watching play out after seeing some things during OTAs and minicamp. Bill.
Oh, competition. I don't know about competition-wise, but I would say the group that I'm looking at the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see what the offensive line does because I think we all know how important the offensive line is to the team, to the offense, to the production of whoever's going to be quarterback back there, to the production of the running backs. So I'm looking at the offensive line, see how they progress during training camp. new offense, new scheme, new coaching. So let's see what happens there. I want to see how they do. So to me, yes, we all know about Anthony Richardson. We all know about Minshew, and we know about that competition there. We all know talk about the cornerback position as well. But off the line, to me, is going to be the position that I look at because I want to see how they do, and I think that's going to dictate it'll dictate partly how good this offense will be going into this 2023 season.
No, I agree. I think definitely there is where my eyes are going to be looking at, but I think tight ends and then all of the secondary. Yeah. There are question marks. You've got the injury to Daniel Scott, which is going to impact the safety group because you just depth-wise.
Real quick on that case, Daniel Scott placed on injured reserve last week, tore his ACL, so he is done for his rookie year. That's a bummer. I think the Colts are going to count on him this year for some snaps. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. That is a big loss because he may not have been one of those guys fighting for a lot of defensive snaps this season, but he's a guy who played over 600 special team snaps during his – I mean, he spent a long time in college. I mean, he's an older rookie. He had a lot of special teams. He'd done it for a long time, so that was an area I was really kind of a little upset to see that injury happen because it's really going to keep your eyes there. But corner, you got a lot of young guys, so it's going to be a lot of youth trying to, figure out what that starting lineup's going to look like at the corner spot. But as we mentioned, and you talk about Kylan Granson in the spring he did that with guys like Jelani Woods, Drew Ogletree, Will Mallory sidelined for a majority of the time. Seeing all of them back with a guy like Pharaoh Brown and Mo Alley Cox, there's a lot of guys with a lot of experience fighting for some minimal spots. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how that tight end room kind of shapes out because there's some guys who I wouldn't be shocked to see not make this roster, make someone else's.
That's going to be interesting. I think that will probably be one of the toughest battles of the team as far as who's going to be on this roster as far as from the tight end position. I agree with you there, Casey.
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing I want to watch is just how do all the rookies the Colts have.
Yeah.
How does that shake out?
There's a lot of them.
Because you draft 12 players and bring in quite a few undrafted free agents, a lot of whom you do like and are interested in seeing. There's going to be a lot of competition there. It's that to me, the down the roster battles during training camp are going to be fascinating.
Yes, absolutely.
Because can the Colts keep all 12 rookies? I don't know, but they could earn their way onto the roster,
right? And
that could then lead to some names who maybe you recognize not making the roster. It's going to be really competitive up in Grand Park, and I think Shane Steichen has set this team up for healthy competition.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And look, it starts with the quarterback room. Like, I know we said we're not going to talk about the quarterback room, but the competition in there, hearing Gardner Minshew last week talk about why the Colts are so excited. You see Anthony Richardson making a big throw. The first guy over to him is Gardner Minshew to jump and give him a high five. But it's because I think Gardner Minshew has set the tone for the quarterback room, and I think if you're looking at this entire team, he's like, look, I'm going to take care of what I can do. Anthony's taking care of what he can do, and the success of one of me does not impact Anthony. The success of Anthony does not impact me, but it impacts the entire team. So we need to be rooting for each other. And I think for everyone, you see the quarterback competition and see how they're operating. That's how it should look at every other position group.
And I think it's a good competition. You want that type of competition. And I know what we used to say when I was playing was, let's make it tough on the coaches.
Right.
Let them make a tough decision. They have to make a tough decision. If we go and compete like we should compete against each other, all in fun, all in good competition, no malice or anything like that, then it's going to be tough on the coaches to make a decision, but that's only going to make us better as a team. And that's what you want. And that's what I like seeing. I like seeing those guys go out there, hey, high-fiving the guy for throwing a touchdown pass. But then, you know what? I'm going out there. I'm making a 20-yard completion myself. So those are the things you want to see out there in practice.
Well, Bill, you can speak to this. I mean, you played at the highest level. I know me. I did not play nearly at the highest level, but I played collegiate baseball. Yes. And one of the things that you see people compete. That's just what you wanted. You're a competitor. And you see someone do something, you're like, all right, that was pretty cool. I want to do something better.
Exactly.
And that's what's going to do. You see guys continuing to play at the top of what they can do. It just makes everybody else better. So you want to have competition.
Yes.
And that's maybe why I'm really looking forward to this training camp, because there's a lot of questions. And I kind of like it. Like, I'm okay that I don't know what it's going to look like, when August 1 rolls around to what August 16 rolls around. I am excited to see just the change that you see throughout camp.
This is great because we are now going to transition into wet cement.
All right.
By the way, I saw a story recently of probably the worst
cement?
high school prank. No, this is like senior pranks in high school. Like usually it's like, you planted a tree in the pitcher's mound, or you put glitter on the football field, or something that's like, that's annoying.
It's harmless. Yeah, right.
Some kid, apparently, I don't know where this was, he put Quikrete down the toilets at his school and caused several $1,000s worth of damage to the plumbing. And the quote I saw was that he said he would get a summer job to work it off. I'm like, buddy, you're going to need more than a summer job to pay that.
You might need 4 summer jobs, buddy.
Don't do that. Anyways, for wet cement, let's start with the quarterback battle between Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew. Did the spring play any role in who the Colts are going to roll with at quarterback in week 1? Like, was there really any competition going on, or is that cement still just, it hasn't even left the mixer yet?
I would say that the cement hasn't left the mixer, but it's starting to drip down, if that makes sense. I think ultimately we all knew what Gardner Minshew was going to come in and do. Gardner Minshew was going to come in and kind of, steady the troops, if you will. He was going to have that veteran leadership. He knows the Shane Steichen offense. But ultimately, he is just kind of there to get things ready, so when Anthony Richardson's ready to roll, he's the guy for the future. You don't take a guy 4th overall at the quarterback position and not anticipate him being the guy at some point. So I don't know whether or not we'll know whether or not the cement is dry when training camp is over. I think right now you're seeing it, dribble out. I don't know ultimately when you will be able to know. It's a terrible answer.
It's like probably middle of August.
Right. Like that's probably a good call, because I think ultimately there's a really good possibility that Gardner Minshew starts the season as the quarterback, but I don't think that's the way that it's going to end up, because Anthony Richardson, the only way for him to get better is to take those snaps, to take his lumps, his ups and downs. So ultimately that's where we're going to be. So right now, the cement, I don't think it's left the mixer. It's going to be very, very wet when the middle of camp rolls around, and we won't know when it's dry until maybe the time that week 10 rolls around.
For the cement to dry, Bill.
I love this. I love this is great.
For me, it's how does Anthony Richardson respond to the bad days in training camp? He's going to have days where he can barely complete a pass. He's getting picked off. It's not working for him because he is a young quarterback. Every single rookie quarterback is going to have those days in practice. How does he come back the next day? Does it spiral? Does it snowball? Or does he take the mistakes that he made and does he learn from them and then correct them going forward? To me, that's the biggest thing that I'm watching for in determining this.
And that's a good way of looking at it. And for me, all the spring did for me was, I would say, give Anthony Richardson an opportunity to learn the playbook. So when training camp does start, he is as close to possible as from rookie to be on equal footing to compete for a job. Because if you don't know what the plays are, you don't understand the plays, you really can't compete. Now, Gardner Minshew has the edge because he's a veteran. He sees things. He knows what the defense is trying to do to him. So when he sees a certain defensive front, he knows, okay, this is what they're doing. When he sees a certain coverage, he knows what they're doing. So he can go with the ball. As soon as the ball snaps, he can get the ball right out his hands quick. But with Anthony, this opportunity in the springtime was to get to know the offense, understand the terminology. So going into training camp, he can be as ready as possible to compete with Gardner Minshew. And I agree with you guys, Casey, the cement's probably just coming out just right now as far as when the spring is over, getting ready to go into training camp.
And one of the things I think we've discussed ad nauseum throughout this entire offseason program, it's not super imperative that every single player is out there playing. But ultimately, think about Anthony Richardson. He hasn't been throwing to Michael Pittman. He hasn't seen Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Alec Pierce missed a substantial amount of time. Josh Downs hasn't been out there. So there are a lot of pieces that Anthony Richardson hasn't seen within this offense that more than likely when August rolls around are going to be the guys running those routes. So I think that's also part of it. Same with Gardner Minshew. I mean, he's dealing with the same thing. Exactly. He hasn't seen those guys too. So I think it's really hard to kind of get that gauge until you see everybody and you see kind of how it looks with everybody on the field.
All right, so in the secondary, I think there's only one. Let's say there's 7 starters, right? You're in nickel. That's basically your base defense these days. I think there's one guaranteed starter. That's Kenny Moore II as your kind of nickel corner. If you go to a base 4-3, he kicks outside. Julian Blackmon probably will start, but Nick Cross can compete with him at that strong safety spot. And then let's say there's a scenario where Nick Cross plays really well in training camp, but Julian Blackmon's also playing really well.
Right.
Do you drop Julian Blackmon back to free safety, and then does Rodney Thomas become more of a reserve? So that's why I say there's only one guaranteed starter. Obviously, cornerback with all the youth there, that is wide open and up in the air. How do you see this all playing out? Because safety and corner, the competition there could go any which way. Like every time I see some Colts fans around here, they'll ask me about the secondary, and I'm like, look, it could be you could have your starting corners of like Dallas Flowers, Juju Brents, Kenny Moore. You could have Darius Rush, Kenny Moore, Dallas Flowers. You could have Darrell Baker,
right?
Juju Brents and Kenny. Like it could go any which way, and to me, that competition just being so wide open is one of the most interesting storylines going into training camp.
Yeah, you're gonna have some young players playing in the secondary this year. No matter what you say, no matter what type of combination you have, they're gonna have to play because those guys are right now with Gilmore gone and things in the secondary. So the guys are practicing hard, playing hard, but it's gonna be some young guys and they have to be ready to go. If they're not ready to go by time training camp's over, there's going to be some issues in the secondary. But I like what the guys are doing back there. I mean, I like the situation where you have Julian Blackmon back there at safety. You have Rodney Thomas. You have Dallas Flowers. You have Baker. Of course, you have Kenny Moore. I like the group back there, but it's just a matter of the coaches making a decision. Who's going to give us the best chance to win back there, and who's going to be so good that we have to play them? And I like the young guys because they're long.
Yep.
They're tall and long, and I think that's what Gus Bradley has in the past has had some long defenders to hamper the receivers getting down the field. And for a receiver, I hated guys that were tall and had long arms because it just drove me crazy. Made it tough to get off the line of scrimmage. But
yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the young guys out there in the secondary.
This may be part of the reason that I mentioned I'm so excited to kind of see what it looks like in camp, just because I think there's a real possibility that the secondary looks a lot different than what you've seen any Colts secondary in a while, just because of the guys you have. They bring different skill sets, and that is something that I'm anxious because you kind of seen this in the NFL, the landscape recently is some of these young guys at corner are coming in and making huge differences. You're seeing that at safety too, but it's highlighted at that cornerback position. And I'm anxious because I think there's a lot of talent with a couple of these guys they've brought in that I'm not sure if we're going to see the cement dried at all this year, because there might be a handful of guys that are just interchanging that you can never really say this is what it's going to look like. That's kind of where I look at it.
I mean, the competition's going to extend into the season.
Yes, 100%.
Like the Colts' Week 1 secondary could be very different than the Week 8, Week 15, Week 18. You hope that it stays the same from Week 1.
Continuity is huge. Right. But, yes, I agree.
I think you're totally right about this one, Casey, that this could keep going on throughout the season. All right, what about up front? Two guys who have quite a bit of potential that the Colts are looking for them to continue striving to reach it. Kwity Paye on the defensive line and Bernhard Raimann at left tackle. Right now, I mean, Bernhard Raimann, he's probably your guy there.
Right.
The Colts don't have a veteran, per se, competing with him at that spot. You've got, Blake Freeland, Jake Witt, two guys who were drafted this year. I think, but I like what I've seen from Bernhard Raimann. Like toward the end of last season when he really started to get his feet under him. He put on good weight this offseason. I'm encouraged about Bernhard Raimann. Kwity Paye, the thing that we need to remember with Kwity Paye, this dude, okay, so his sack numbers have been, 4 and 6?
Right.
He's a very good run defender.
Yes.
He can set the edge really well. That is an important thing to do in the NFL. And I think everyone expects, he's a first-round pick. He should be getting 10, 15 sacks a year. You'd love him to reach that. Kwity Paye is a good NFL player right now. He can get better, and he can get after the quarterback more consistently. But to me, he's a good NFL player. Drafted 21st overall. That is a good thing. Do you see signs, though, that Bernhard Raimann can improve from being a good for a rookie, solid for a rookie left tackle into being a good NFL left tackle? Do you see signs, Bill, that Kwity Paye can improve from being a good NFL player who can stop the run to a very good NFL player who can really consistently get after the quarterback?
I think yes to both of those questions, because first you saw Bernhard Raimann make steps, make gains throughout the season last year. He got better as the season went on. And I think that he can continue to do that during this offseason and going into training camp and being ready for the season to make those steps. And I think he's gonna have to in order for this offensive line to be successful and to be successful as the way they want to be successful in running this offense. And then, of course, Kwity Paye. Remember, Kwity Paye has been dinged up the past couple of years,
right.
So that just taken him a step back a little bit. So I think if Kwity Paye can stay healthy, I think he can bring up those numbers as far as pass rush and not so much just getting sacks, but putting pressure on the quarterback. Right. To me, those are just as important as a sack and making him make the quarterback make a bad throw or a bad decision back there. And as you said, JJ, Kwity Paye is good against the run. Mm-hmm. And to play defensive line, we all think about getting sacks and we need to get sacks, but
there's more
other teams do run the ball.
Yep.
They do.
And
they have good runners.
If Kwity Paye couldn't stop the run, they would just run it right at him.
Exactly.
100%.
So my thing. So he's doing his job. So yes, you want to see him take the next step, and I think he can take the next step. And I think for Kwity, just hearing him talk, he really wants to take that next step right now. So he's doing all the things he needs to do to get ready so he can be that guy on the defense to help put pressure against the quarterback and, of course, get more sacks.
Last week on the podcast, we talked about ESPN.com put out an article about the 5 top players for each team. And these 2 guys were not on there. And one of the things that I thought Matt Taylor said really well last week is at the end of the year, if the Colts are showing that projection, they look like they're heading into 2024 in a positive light, both Bernhard Raimann and Kwity Paye are a part of that top 5 list, and I 100% agree. I think there are a lot of tools in their game that they have shown they've made those strides to continue to be able to prove they can take that next step to be, whether that's, for Bernhard Raimann just to be you can pencil him in at left tackle and you're safe there. And then even Kwity Paye to that point where maybe he is in that discussion of your most important defensive players on this team. But I think when you look at the positions that they play, that's part of the reason this question is in here. I think they both have those tools and that skill set to make that next step. And this year I think is huge for both of them. I mean, I think right now that cement is pretty dry. I think right now you know what you know that those guys are potential pillars. The cement's dry. You just have to improve on it. And I think this is a big – you mentioned Kwity Paye and the nagging injuries he's had. I think if he can put together a full season, it's one of those things. Injuries happen in the game of football, so it's going to happen. But if Kwity Paye can put together a full season, I think you can really get a good idea this year of where he's going to be for the next handful of years. And Bernhard Raimann, I agree completely. I think he showed a lot of strides last year at the end of the year that he was making that next step. Give him a full off season. He's gained. Yeah, I think he said he put on 30 pounds.
Yeah, and here's the thing. It's good weight.
Right.
It's not just
he didn't just add weight like I do.
Right. Yeah.
Eating everything, chips
exactly.
and candy and
I don't
ice
care.
cream and soda.
Nutritional value out the window for me. For him, he's putting on good weight. I think he is taking every step he needs to get to that point.
All right, one more wet cement deal here. And I love how this one, Mayte, put this in the rundown. The Colts tight end room. All right, so let's just kind of reset this a little bit. The Colts are bringing back all 3 tight ends that played over 330 snaps last year. That would be Mo Alley-Cox, Jelani Woods, and Kylen Granson. They also are bringing back Drew Ogletree, who was the 6th-round pick last year, who the Colts thought was going to be a really good player before he tore his ACL in a joint practice with the Detroit Lions. Then Will Mallory was a 5th-round pick this year. Pharaoh Brown and Caden Smith were both signed in free agency. All right, so let's say you're trying to fill in a 4-foot by 4-foot box here. Do the Colts have too much cement? Is there too much cement in the mixer to fill in the tight end box, and is it too wet right now.
You're rolling over into the grass, and I'm going to take this one, Bill. I don't think there's ever too much cement because I'm a big believer in depth, but you're pretty close. I mean, there is a lot of NFL experience in a lot of different ways. That's one of the things I like about this tight end room because you got a lot of different guys that offer different skill sets, and I think that's a good thing to have, especially in a Shane Steichen offense where he likes to utilize players in different ways. You know, you may have one wide receiver that looks like this, another looks like that. Same with the tight end spot. So I'm interested to see what happens here because I think there is a lot of cement. I don't know if there's too much, but there is an overflowing amount that could get to the point where there's a tipping point. So we'll see what happens there.
I would say you have some variety, like you said, Casey, at the tight end position here. You know, you have guys that are tall. I mean, most of the guys are tall and big, but you have Kylen Granson a little on the smaller side that can run and is a little quicker maybe than some other guys. But I like this. I'm looking forward to this competition.
Yeah.
There's going to be some good competition. And, you know, JJ, you mentioned Drew Ogletree last year, you know, having a good camp and looking very good in camp before the injury. And I'm looking to see how he bounces back from that injury and how he looks come training camp when he's ready to go to practice. And so you have someone like that, if he can continue to progress and get better, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. And then we know what Jelani Woods did last year, how he played as a rookie, making some big plays, being a big target for quarterbacks. And I know quarterbacks love having big targets, especially over the middle. So it's going to be interesting to see what these guys do. This might be one of the best competitions in training camp as far as who makes a team and who gets playing time and where's the ball going.
Right. I mean, I think you're right because I think there's going to be some names that you're going to see. Wow, they cut him, and
exactly.
he may have had a really good camp. You just got to look at it from a numbers perspective. I completely agree.
And there's going to be some team that gets a good player. Some other team's going to get a good player.
And that is one thing that Chris Ballard has always said. You want to release guys that other teams are picking up, and I think there's a really good possibility that this tight end room you're going to see maybe a couple guys that get NFL jobs because there's just a lot of depth and pretty good talent there.
Yeah.
One other thing to wrap up before we wrap up this podcast, just from minicamp, was Jonathan Taylor talked last week a little bit about his situation, and he's up for a contract extension. He's in the final year of his 4-year rookie contract, being a 2020 draft pick, and being a running back and trying to get paid is a tough needle to thread in the NFL today. I mean, you look at just this offseason, Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs both got the franchise tag. Josh Jacobs led the NFL in rushing last year. Saquon Barkley, one of the best running backs in the NFL. He can do everything, catch the ball, run the ball, whatever you need him to do. Neither of them have signed that franchise tag yet. And I believe that's like $10.8 million, I want to say.
Yeah, something right around there, yeah.
So, you know, you're probably looking for a long-term deal. The teams are hesitant to give those to running backs. Dalvin Cook just got released.
Yep.
Ezekiel Elliott got released. It's a tough thing to be a running back and to get paid. Do you want to know how old Todd Gurley is, by the way?
Oh, I saw some.
When was the last time Todd Gurley last played in the NFL? In 2020.
He was 28?
Todd Gurley is 28 years old.
It's unbelievable to me.
Todd Gurley was a two-time first-team All-Pro in 2017 and 2018. He was the AP Offensive Player of the Year in 2017.
Wow.
And he's out of the league.
28!
And he's been out of the league now going on 3 seasons.
That to me is more amazing than actually his age. 3 seasons?
Yes.
As good as he was.
Yep.
He's been out 3 seasons? Wow.
This, to me, Jonathan Taylor, the contract, if he gets a contract extension from the Colts, he'll have earned it. He'll have deserved it.
By far.
Nick Chubb, I think, to me, is the guy, if you're Jonathan Taylor, you're looking at Nick Chubb.
Yep.
And he signed an extension, and Nick Chubb has been good throughout the extension so far. I mean, Nick Chubb's one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL. I was listening to the Athletic Football Show coming in today, and they were talking about how Nick Chubb's probably the best pure running back in the NFL. I think Jonathan Taylor's right there in that conversation. And to me, the running back value debate, this could be a whole podcast. I'm sure you can find the debate somewhere if you want to really get into it. If you're listening to this and you're like, I want to learn more about the running back debate, just like, I don't know, put on any national NFL show and you're going to get a debate about it. What does all this mean, though, when you see the landscape of the NFL and how running backs are being devalued compared to the 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. What does it all mean for Jonathan Taylor? And before we kind of get into that, we have a couple of sound bites just so you guys can hear it from JT himself last week. So take a listen to these.
Yeah, they definitely are, and it's sad. It sucks because a lot of positions do a lot for their team, but specifically speaking for the running back position, I can just speak firsthand. We do a lot, and you just want to be treated fairly, and not even treated fairly. You just want to be, appreciated for what you bring to the team. It's never about yourself. It's about the team. So what do you bring to the team? So, just seeing guys fight, you just hope that things work out for them. I mean, you see why guys, they request trades. They want, they just want to feel valued by not only their coaches, their teammates, but the organization as well. And I think it's something you got to continue to do. You definitely have to pay attention just so you know, okay, what type of space are you entering into? Mm-hmm. And you just hope, from the track record here, you hope that the things are being evaluated the right way. It's not just all about – it's all about the wins. You want to make sure at the end of the day you guys are winning games. You want to win championships. But it's a lot – I feel like it's a lot more with this organization. It's, what are you doing in the community? Are you trying to uplift the community? Are you trying to uplift your teammates? So you just hope that, the organization sees that value and everything that you're trying to provide, not only to the team but also to the community.
So, Bill, when you hear Jonathan Taylor talk about those things, he's obviously very cognizant of what's going on out there. What does this mean for him? What does this landscape mean for one of the best running backs in the NFL who is going to be up for a contract extension right now with the Colts?
Well, as someone that understands the landscape right now, what's going on as far as around the NFL, and also I think each team is going to handle it differently. So each team looks at, of course, the running back position differently. Each team is going to handle their own free agents differently than some other teams. And I think Jonathan Taylor has made a good case for himself, what he has done in the past and his age. He's a younger guy that, he deserves to be paid a little bit more money than what the teams want to pay some of these other running backs. And he's done a good job. Jonathan Taylor can run the ball. He holds on to the ball. He blocks. He does those things. He is a guy that the team values. And with the landscape changing, though, of the NFL, you're talking about the guys previously 10 years ago, it was more of a running league. Now this is a passing league, and everything's geared around the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and the defensive ends and the tackles, and that's where this league's going to. So it makes it tough for running backs because a lot of teams don't put as much value on the running backs. But I think Jonathan Taylor has shown that he can be that home run hitter. He can be the guy that makes a difference for a team, and that when you're running the ball with Jonathan Taylor, other teams have to pay attention to that. So I think Jonathan Taylor brings a lot of value to this team, and I think he knows that, and I think he's shown what he can do for the Indianapolis Colts.
I think ultimately we're biased because we see what Jonathan Taylor does firsthand. We're watching him in practice doing all of that. So I think our view may be a little tainted, but the way that I look at it is he is different from all the other guys. And the big reason why you talk about quarterback contracts, the Colts are on a different scale right now.
Yes, that's true.
You have a rookie quarterback in place. So if you're at that situation, Dalvin Cook, you have Kirk Cousins there. Ezekiel Elliott, you've got Dak Prescott there. They also had Tony Pollard, who's a pretty good running back. That's part of that reason. The same things goes with Josh Jacobs. Yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo's not being paid as a premier quarterback, but he's on a different contract scale. So I think a lot of that also plays into it. And I look at this team and I see how can Anthony Richardson be the best Anthony Richardson, and that is with a Jonathan Taylor helping him do that. One of the things I think that also is playing a big role, it's a passing league, yes. You look at durability, where running backs kind of hit their peak and all of that. It all plays into it. But also, when you look at some of the young guys, I mean, look at these young running backs on rookie contracts that have come in and made impacts recently. That's part of it. You look at the Super Bowl, and Pacheco from Kansas City was taken in the 7th round. That's kind of where you look at some of the way the teams are, but the way that this team is constructed, Jonathan Taylor He is a pillar. He is a part of this offense that I think the only way, maybe not the only way, but the best way to see the progress of Anthony Richardson from day one to the end of the year, it comes with having Jonathan Taylor as a nice security blanket, both in the run game, and you've seen him be able to be effective in the passing game as well.
Jonathan Taylor's 24.
Yeah,
I mean, that is a big factor.
That's why I said
here.
there was.
Yes.
That's why the age difference, because you look
Yep.
at Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook was 27.
Yeah.
I think Ezekiel is 27. So you got people say, "Oh, it's only 3 years." That makes a big difference.
Oh, huge.
It's a huge difference. So you got, like I say, Jonathan Taylor 24. So him being able to secure a contract is in his favor because of his age, and
Right.
of course, of what the value he has to this team.
Dalvin Cook, so from his age 25 through 27 season, he ran the ball 825 times in that span. That is a lot of carries. That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of
And look,
tread.
by the way,
gone.
if let's say Jonathan Taylor got Dalvin Cook's contract extension and he got the same production-ish that Dalvin Cook got, that's really good. The Vikings got their money's worth out of the Dalvin Cook contract, and then they did release him, but they absolutely got their money's worth out of that. Just because you give a running back an extension does not mean you're not going to get value out of it.
Exactly.
The Browns are getting a lot of value out of the Nick Chubb contract extension. I think you can say the Cowboys got value out of the Zeke contract, ultimately.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that you can't just look at it as like you should never pay a running back. They don't have the kind of value. You can just find a guy off the street. Like, you can't find a Jonathan Taylor off the street.
100%.
There's a difference between the elite guys who, like Bill
Exactly.
said, the home run hitters. Jonathan Taylor is an explosive, efficient running back. He can do both. That, to me, those are the kind of guys who, if you reward them, you will get value back. As opposed to maybe someone who's just efficient, not explosive. Someone who's just explosive but not efficient. That's where you might get into the waters where you might regret that extension a little bit.
You brought up Nick Chubb. I don't think the Browns are at all regretting the decision there. I mean, the 49ers gave up a pretty good haul to get Christian McCaffrey, but I don't think they even cared about what that compensation was, because those are the kinds of players those players are. And I really do think that Jonathan Taylor, as I mentioned, we're biased. We see him every day.
Right.
But I think he's absolutely in that category. And those are the things. When Chris Ballard talks about you pay good players regardless of the position, Jonathan Taylor falls into that category because he is a great player who, in my opinion, would deserve whatever contract extension or whatever it is, just because he is at the elite when you come to the running back room.
And you bring up Christian McCaffrey. You look at the San Francisco 49ers. He fits that system well.
100%.
Someone that can run the ball hard and catch the ball out of the backfield.
Right.
So he fits that system well. So they value him.
Right.
Same thing with Jonathan Taylor. He'll probably fit this system well, this Shane Steichen system, where they'll value Jonathan Taylor. So,
like you said, it's team by team.
It's
Bill.
team by team.
100%.
So you warrant that. Well, okay, if Jonathan Taylor fits this system, we're going to pay him because we know we're going to get production. As you guys were talking, JJ mentioned, you mentioned, Casey, we're going to get production out of these guys. So we're going to get our value out of these guys and what they can mean to the team, and not just on the football field, but off the football field as well. Jonathan Taylor's a leader. He's a leader, one of the leaders of this team. So that's value in itself, what he can do in the locker room, how he presents himself, how he goes to work each and every day. That is value for this team. So I think that he will bring the value that he will get the value that he deserves as far as from the contract.
And when you're establishing a culture and you're rewarding your own guys,
Right.
that does go
It's
a long
huge.
way. That's
It
big.
is huge.
Yep.
Man.
All right, let's move on to my favorite part of the podcast every week, the random thought of the week. Mate's out this week. We don't have the jingle.
No jingle.
No jingle this
He
week.
didn't send me the jingle. Come on, Matt.
So we all got out and played a little golf this last weekend. Casey, you got to play with some of your friends you hadn't seen in a little while.
Yeah.
I got to play. I played 3 times this weekend.
Look at you.
That was
Wow,
insane.
look at you.
I happy Father's Day weekend.
There
to me.
you go, JJ.
Bill, you got out and you played in Anthony Calhoun's fundraising outing. So I always think about this because I'm not good enough to like really care about the golf balls that I use. So I'll go and I'll buy X
I
outs
like it.
from Play It Again Sports. But then, I hit my ball, I played at Eagle Creek the other day. And I hit my ball into the deep heather, and I'm rooting around for it, and I found a couple of ice balls. And I grabbed those. I never played with them before. And the next hole I went and I hit those. and I drove it probably like 10 yards shorter than I'd been driving it using a Titleist.
Huh.
So I got to thinking, does it really matter, or did I just have like a worse swing on that drive? Does the golf ball matter? Bill, does the golf ball matter?
Here we go. This is great.
Okay, from a physical standpoint, I really don't know if it matters or not. But for me, mentally,
Okay.
it matters for me what ball I'm playing. If I think I'm playing the ball that I'm comfortable with, which is usually a Titleist or a Bridgestone or a TaylorMade, I play one of those 3 balls. I feel probably a little bit more comfortable, and I'll swing within myself. If there's a ball that I have on the tee or I'm hitting off the ground and it's a ball that I'm not comfortable with, I probably try to swing a little bit harder, and I probably miss the ball.
Okay.
And I probably don't hit it as well as I should. So for me, it's all mental. I don't know if it actually makes a difference if one ball flies further than another or spins. Well, I know one ball might spin more than the other, depending on the ball. But as far as go further, I don't know. Physically, mentally, yes.
So 100% right there with you, Bill. I don't know what the term is, but I think it's just a problem. I think I have a problem. And what I do before I play is I pick out a brand. So in my bag, I have so many golf balls.
Yes.
I have so many golf balls, from Callaway to Top Flight to whatever it is. So, like, I'll go in picking out a brand, and that's the ball that I will look for the entire time I play. If I happen to lose a ball, I go back into the bag, I have to find that ball. So, like, yes, let's take into consideration. So I golfed on Monday, and I used here's a shameless plug for a buddy of mine. He has started creating golf balls. Okay, he's from where I grew up. He's one of my brother's best friends. He's a big shot attorney in California, and as a side business, he and a buddy are creating what are called breakfast balls. I'm sure you can go on the website and find them, but he sent me a package of breakfast balls at Christmas. And yesterday was my first day getting out. So I was like, hey, Dylan, I'm going to play your breakfast balls. I didn't lose a single golf ball yesterday. So here's my thing now. Now I'm a big breakfast ball supporter.
You can't not use them now.
And it was so funny because yesterday there were 3 times where I had a ball that may be a little awry, and I'm looking, and one of the things I did like is you ain't going to find a breakfast ball anywhere else, because this is a very, almost like exclusive to just my brother's friends and maybe me and my dad who have these. So it was kind of a comforting feeling, like you won't find the ball that I'm hitting. And maybe I almost felt that way of like, I've got an exclusive golf ball yesterday. So that might be where my mind is now, but I am strictly like, I have Titleist, Callaway, and now breakfast balls in one bag, part of my bag. All the other ones, they just go into this bottom. And I'm sure they have no difference in my golf game because, like JJ said, he's not that good. I'm right in that same boat. I'm not good enough to really see a difference in golf ball, but mentally, absolutely.
All right, one other one about golf. Is golf the best sport to yell at the TV at? Like, Rory, just hit a putt. Like, I found myself doing that during the U.S. Open. And I'm just like, wait a minute. If I was putting on the same green from the same spot as Rory McIlroy, I would 5-putt. And I'm like, just hit a putt. What are you doing? And then I'm like, wait, hold on. To me, golf is the best because it's the sport that, like, we all can play.
Right.
Like, I can't, I'm watching a football game and Joe Burrow sails a pass. I'm never like, God, what a terrible throw. I couldn't do that. I'm watching, Shohei Ohtani strike someone out. I'm like, just hit the slider. Nope, couldn't do that. Golf to me is the one sport where you're like, yeah, I could hit that shot, even if you can't, but you can envision yourself doing it. So I found myself during the U.S. Open having to catch myself a bunch when Rory kept hitting greens in regulation and then parring everything. Just like, just hit one putt. You could do it. I could make that putt. No, I couldn't.
I like to think that and this has nothing to do with me thinking that are feeling like I'm a player, but I react to watching sports just like all the players in the locker room, where I am very opinionated. There's people who are like, man, you're not fun to watch. Like, I go to Super Bowl parties, I don't enjoy it because I'm like, I don't want to hear what you have to say because I've got my own way of watching. Mm-hmm. Like my wife, I feel sorry for her if she ever watches any sporting events with me because she's like, oh boy, I'm going to go upstairs. Because that's how I am. I watch a baseball game, I'm like, seriously, what are you waiting on? I mean, that's the pitch to hit. What are you doing? Or, you're watching golf and you're like, Man, you're 120 out and you just left yourself 30 feet? Like, come on, hit it close. I'm the same way. And then I'll go out there and I do the exact same thing. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should temper it down. But then I start watching and I do the same thing week in and week out. So, I don't know. Golf, I would say yes. I'm the same way with baseball. I'm the same way with, I see a guy miss 5 free throws. I'm like, dude, don't you practice? Come on, it's a free throw. So I'm the same way. I'm a terrible guy at spectating sports.
But see, I'm the worst guy to watch sports with because I with football, and Bill, I'm sure you can speak to this too. Like you played the game, so you can speak to it even more. But you're watching football and it's just like, what kind of play was that? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, it looks like the receiver's depth was a little bit off. Like that wasn't a bad throw. That was really on the receiver. And then they're just like, can you just shut up for a second and let me watch this game in peace? I get that from my wife all the time.
That's a good point.
So.
That's a good point.
Now, I do that in football. When I see a play happen, I try to figure out why did the play not work. Not so much with the play work or, hey, this guy made a great catch, or this guy, that's a nice move he made on the linebacker and to break free. So I'll say that or whatever, but I usually don't say too much. Now, when it comes to golf, with those guys, I don't say anything because I was thinking back when I was watching U.S. Open a few days ago, these guys are hitting the ball 200 and some odd yards in a par 3, and they're using 7 irons, 8 irons. I'm like, I can't do that. Okay, that's not happening for me.
Let me get up my hybrid here.
Yes, that's not happening to me. And they're hitting it on the green and rolling it up to about 6 feet, 4 feet from the hole. I was like, I can't do that. So with the golf, to me, I think those guys are amazing what they do.
Oh, yeah.
And then you look at the courses I play. Some of them are difficult, but like the U.S. Open, they're not anywhere near as difficult as those guys as far as the speed of the greens, the depth of the rough. That's why I said, you know what? You guys are unique. You guys are good at what you do. I cannot do that. So I just marvel at what they do on a day in and day basis. And to do it 4 days in a row.
Yes.
Yep.
To do it 4 days in a row.
I go 3 days in a row and my body feels like it's going to explode.
But also, when's the last time that you took a shot and you had 500 people staring at you?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know how they do that. Like, there's something to be said about just that part. Like, yeah, I would love to have a gallery for when I hit my ball left and someone goes and finds it, but I wouldn't be able to strike that ball on the tee when I have all those people around me watching. And the slightest, boo! I mean, what?
Exactly.
No way. There's a lot of that part that I'm like, that takes a different kind of guy to be able to stand there and do what they do, for sure.
Well, shout out to those, because I felt bad the amount I was yelling at the TV.
Wyndham Clark.
Yeah,
did anybody know who Wyndham Clark was before this
shout
weekend?
Out to Wyndham Clark.
Congratulations.
I did like his caddy kept telling him, be an athlete. Be an athlete.
Be an athlete.
Because you don't think of golfers as athletes,
right,
but
no,
they
you
sure
don't.
are.
They are.
Yeah.
They are athletes. They are athletes.
All right, well, that is going to do it for this episode of the Official Colts Podcast presented by WynnBET. Coming up this week on the Colts Audio Network, the Colts Reunion Podcast is back. Bill, you sat down along with Matt Taylor with a couple of Colts players from years past. The first guest coming up is Dallas Clark. That episode will be out on Wednesday. That was a really interesting episode. He talked about how he's running a family farm back in Iowa, why he moved back to Iowa, what inspired him to become an Ironman triathlete, which is...
Yes.
Man.
And by the way, the guy who inspired him to become an Ironman triathlete, very interesting. Very notable IndyCar driver.
Yes.
And he also talked about some memories about being a vital weapon in the Colts offense and going from being a guy who looked around to the huddle to Marvin Harrison and Peyton Manning and Reggie Wayne and being like, what am I doing here? To being one of the most important members of the Colts' dominant offense of the 2000s. So again, that episode of the Colts Reunion Podcast will be out on Wednesday. On Thursday, the Person Behind the Pads podcast is back. Lara Overton is with Julian Blackman, talking about his childhood and some of the roles that music and sports played in his formative years, also how his older brothers helped him get ready for the rigors of life in the NFL. We have a couple more of those coming up, too. Matt Taylor sat down with Shane Steichen.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good one.
That's going to be cool.
And I had a fascinating chat with Jonathan Taylor about everything from growing up in a small town to astronomy to his thoughts on space travel were like so enlightening. I was like, this is great. I'm digging it.
There's just something different about Jonathan Taylor.
I love talking about him. Love it.
You talk about fascinating conversation. Like, I've never had a bad conversation with that guy. There's a lot going on in Jonathan Taylor's head, and then he goes out and dominates on Sundays. It's pretty impressive.
So keep an eye out for those podcasts coming up in the next couple of weeks. Also, if you haven't listened to it, last week I sat down with DeForest Buckner to talk about being a dad.
Yeah, that was great.
We ran that one before Father's Day, and yeah, what a guy DeForest Buckner
Oh,
is.
man, yeah.
Like, just the way that he handles being a professional football player and everything it takes for him to get ready for Sundays, while also intentionally spending time with his kids and his wife. Really good conversation with Buck if you haven't caught up on that one. The Last Word is back on Friday. Casey, you and Jeffrey talking quarterbacks?
We're hopefully Jeffrey. With Jeffrey, he's in parts unknown. So, I reached out to him yesterday and didn't hear a response. So I'm hoping we can coordinate with Jeffrey on a time. But yeah, we're talking quarterbacks. We've gone through the positional previews kind of all the way through. So we're to that point now where we're getting to talk some quarterback chatter. We've got Anthony Richardson, Gardner Minshew, and Shane Steichen all have a little bit of clips here we'll throw in, but should be some good conversations with the Gore Man on Friday.
All right, well, that is going to do it for us here on the Colts Audio Network. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Download us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. You can watch these podcasts on YouTube, just the audio version. You can also watch some of the Person Behind the Pads podcasts, the actual interviews. Pretty cool. Those. Check those out on YouTube. Subscribe to the Colts YouTube page as well. Anyways, for Casey Valier and Bill Brooks, I'm JJ Stankovitz. Thank you so much for listening to us here on the official Colts podcast presented by WynnBET. Talk to you next week.